All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to Shexel Live. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining in from. This is Shexel Live, and it is really an honor to be on your screen once again. All right, so today we are going to look at something amazing. Okay, we're going to look at another template. We're going to do some customization. All right, so let me just put context to what we are coming to do. All right, so we're going to look at a risk assessment report. All right, so a risk assessment has been done, and we are looking at the structure of the template because we've been asked to create a dashboard out of this risk assessment report. But then there's not so much, data in there. It's just like a few data, and we want to see how we can actually build template out of this, right? So, if you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to Shexel Live. All right. So this is the platform where we actually go live, to showcase how we do customization, how we actually, improve on template and things like that. Okay. All right. So without wasting time, I'm just gonna head right into it. All right. All right. So if you're joining us, you're most welcome. All right. So we're gonna look at the templates, but let me just make sure that the sound is not too loud. All right. I think that that is okay, right? All right. So basically, when it comes to risk assessment, it is actually a living document, right? And we need to make sure that we can make a lot of meaning out of a risk assessment report. So it's quite a norm that a lot of risk assessment reports, you don't see any form of dashboard from these reports. All right. So we're going to look at one of such reports, and we will look at how we can structure it properly so that we can be able to generate some reports. Okay. If you're joining us for the first time, you're welcome to Shexel Live. And today is probably, the last day I'm going to be showing up like this with all these, background with my, my hat and my, with this show mic and everything. Because from Saturday, actually, I'm traveling tomorrow to UAE and I'm going back, for work. And that means that, I'll try my best to come online, but it's not going to be every single day. And if I'm coming, probably it's not going to be this sort of setup, but it's going to be like something very rough because I'm going to be going to the desert, and on the desert it's not like a very comfortable place, right? Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So today is probably my last video in a well-organized fashion like this, right? And then once we are there, we will see how we will manage, right? So can probably be coming once in a while, or if possible, we could still be coming, but I'm not going to be showing my face, right? So let's see how that goes, right? All right, so without wasting time, I'm just going to be heading straight into this template because the time is not on our side. I want to see how fast we can move. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing my screen right now so that we can put some context into this template, right? All right, so I'm going to make it big a little bit so that we can see what it is. So as you can see, this is a risk assessment, right? Risk assessment report. So there are some, some ratings going on here so that we estimate the initial risk level. There's going to be final risk level after mitigation, and then there's going to be something for residual risk. Okay. So this is basically what the risk assessment report has been structured. And this type of risk assessment report is quite broad. It's not just related, it's looking at a lot of things. When we go into the risk matrix, we see that it is actually looking at a lot of things, right? You're looking at health and safety, you're looking at environment, you're looking at financial, you're looking at organizational reputation. So this section is basically about, the severity of, the outcome. And this section has to do with the likelihood, right? So likelihood is being, basically tracked against all of these parameters. And for that reason, in the risk analysis, they have the various categories. So if I make it big a little bit, you notice that you have the section that has to do with safety. You have the one that has to do with environment, financial, reputation. And then we're going to look at the maximum of all of this, right? So they actually, they have a way of estimating some of these things, right? So they're looking at the maximum of all the. So the maximum of the rating is what is used over here, because if this one is a higher a higher severity over the environment and the financial, they're going to pick the highest. So that logic with this very type of rating. And then they have, basically they're able to estimate. They have some terminologies, right? They have their own terminologies they are using. And this terminologies is being selected from a scale of 1 to 5. And then there's the initial risk, risk level. So basically, all of this section is for risk analysis. And then they have another terminology that they use to estimate what the risk level is, right? So this is something related to cybersecurity. Now it's quite broad in scope because there's a little bit of it on health and safety, environment, and all of that. And then once they implement a corrective action and safety controls, right? Control measures for each of the risk IDs, then they're going to have another mitigation, right? Mitigation, the terminologies, I'm not too familiar with it. I'll probably have to find out again. MTL, right? MTL, it has a name. I don't know. I have to find out. All right. So basically, sometimes when you're doing this customization, it's not everything that you know, but just understand the logic, right? So there's another opportunity to do risk analysis here. This is based on another basically severity of the risk. And then based on the fact that they've been able to introduce some, some new entries here, that is going to multiply by the max again to give us another risk level, right? So this is the final risk level. And then we're going to have the recommendation. And then the recommendation, following that, they're going to evaluate the risk again. They're going to assign something that is relatively lower. And that's going to give another level of risk, which is a residual risk. But that's not all. Let me just make my screen big. All right, so that's not all. Okay, for some reason I'm still there. I wonder why I'm still there though. I want to be able to just hide my face and make the screen big. All right, perfect. I think I found it. All right, so basically we need to make sure that we are producing a report from this. All right, so there's also a section on actions. They want to be able to implement an action and assign the action to someone. And then there's going to be a section for determining the status of the risk, whether it is open or closed. Status of the action, right? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be moving very fast at this point. So without further ado, I'll just, get right into it. Okay, so we're going to look at what exactly we can do as far as this template is concerned. Now, a lot of the parameters within this very template are all controlled, right? They're all coming from a drop-down list. All right, so they have the zones which they are inputting levels of, basically levels of basically the activities. They have level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3. So this is not the typical health and safety template that you see. This is more like cybersecurity, right? So they have some, nodes, failure nodes, right? So they have a lot of, basically equipment, process, logic, equipment that they have provided a list of failure nodes. So configuration sensor, configurable sensor, PLC, network switch, NTP, NMI. These are all not safety related, right? Device, they're looking at pressure transmitter, temperature transmitter, PLC, WI, switch, LI. Guys, so this is more like cybersecurity, right? And then they're looking at the threats. So the threat could be internal disgruntled employee, external disgruntled employee, external authorized party. They're looking at threat vectors. Unauthorized physical access, they're looking at threat actions like tampering with the sensor data. They're looking at vulnerabilities like lack of physical security controls. They're looking at consequences such as false readings leading to incorrect process control. So these terminologies, as you can see, they are not safety related. Okay, so let me just show my face once again. So this is not a safety template, right? So this is basically a type of risk assessment which is more focused on cybersecurity, right? But then the risk matrix is more like health and safety, environment, financial, reputational. So that's the ratings they are using, right? So without wasting time, I'm just gonna quickly head back to my screen. All right, so I'm just gonna make sure that the parameters are all properly arranged. So basically, we are trying to control the parameters. You're giving room for them to select parameters as well. So I'm just gonna organize this template. This section, this is the approved list, right? So with most of our templates, there's always the approved list, and that's where we can, predefine all of these parameters. So what I'm gonna do is that I want to make sure that all of these things are properly aligned. Okay, it's not really a big deal, but I just want to make sure that they are properly organized. All of them must be in an Excel table. So this one like this, I'll make sure it's in an Excel table because it's going to be needed within the templates. All right, so this is now in an Excel table because whenever you put things in Excel table, it is properly controlled. So any formula that you apply to that, it's not gonna, it's not gonna vanish if you move the table around. Okay, so this, bring it up a little bit, so just move it up, put it somewhere here, bring it all the way up because I'm just trying to make sure that I properly arrange everything so that it looks very, very, organized. And then there are other ones here. I'm going to bring it all the way up so that it is visible to people when they are using it. It shouldn't be like they are scrolling all the way down to see some hidden items. Everything should be clear all the way up. Okay, so I'm going to do just that. So there's another, approved list. So there's another approved list down here. So all of this stuff, we are using it to control the parameters. So we use them in the template, all right, so that people do not make random entries, but every entry that will be captured in there will be based on what has been approved. These are terminologies that have been approved, right? All right, so basically we have brought this one here. I just want to make sure that, we are expanding everything that we're supposed to be expanding. And even with this likelihood, I'll probably want to be here. Okay, so I'm just going to try to move it around, right? So I'll just bring it all the way down. I can move across the sheet anyway, but I just want to make sure that, okay, let me just do how I feel it's going to take me all the way down, right? And I'm going to move across the sheet to the other end. There's a method to the fact that I don't want to lose any reference to that table, so it's better I just drag it. Okay, I just placed it here. All right, now one thing you need to know about Excel is that there are many ways to kill a cat, right? So somebody will use one, cell reference A1 plus A2 plus A3 to get the same answer. Someone will just use a sum function. So interestingly, when it comes to Excel, you need to really do what makes you comfortable. There are instances where whatever you are doing is probably not looking very smart, but as far as you're able to achieve the results, you're good. So what I'm doing here is probably not too smart. It's just because I don't want to waste too much time trying to reconnect various, cell references to this very table. So I just want to drag the table itself. All right, so it didn't move up. All right. If you're joining for the first time, you are welcome to Shexel Live, right? Shexel Live is the forum where we show how we do our customization, all right, so that you can actually take inspiration from it, or you can get in touch so we customize for you as well, because we are just supporting, the community with solutions that make the work much exciting. All right. So wherever you are, if you have a template that you think you need to improve, you want to make sure that there's some insights to it. You have data that you want to analyze, you can always bring it to us. Okay, we're gonna, make sure that your workflow, your report, your dashboard, everything is, very, very smooth. Okay, so let me try to find. I'm trying to figure out you know. All right, so this is what I've been looking for. Perfect. I always like this color theme, right? So whenever you want in Excel, you can always change the color theme. So the color themes are always here. Sometimes you may be looking for a color, particular color, and you can't find it just because the color theme is different, right? So always I like to choose a particular color. I like it so much. All right, so always the approved list. Sometimes you want to format it nicely. We don't want all those borders showing. Okay, you want to keep it very simple and sweet. Okay, so we have all the approved list in here. So the purpose of having them here and having all of these rows in there is just because we want to make it easy for the user to keep updating, right? So let's see how we can, we can probably reduce it a little bit if really is necessary. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to Excel Live, and this is where we customize template. We show you behind the scene of all the things that we've been doing, and that sort of gives a lot of insight into how you can equally create your own templates. Okay. All right. So basically, I think that we can. So basically, this is the approved list, right? So this approved list are the list of parameters within the template. So you have the list of impact or severity. You have the list. This one is for likelihood. Okay. So when we go into the template, we want to make sure that everything is referencing the correct, entries, right? So if I just double click, so right now what I'm doing is that I'm just quality checking to make sure that it's everything is referencing the right entry, right? All right, so this very one is referencing this very section, right? There we have it with the dotted lines, right? So everything is correct. So that's basically the reason why I just have to drag them around. I didn't want to copy and paste or something, right? Okay. All right, so everything is properly aligned. So what I'm doing is that I'm just, making sure that all the parameters are exactly what it is. The data validation is referencing what it's supposed to be referencing, right? Okay, same with this. I just click on data validation. This is referencing what it's supposed to be doing, right? Exactly. Same with this as well. Is referencing this section, and that is correct, right? And it goes all the way down, so we leave room for the user to keep updating as needed. And this as well. So this section also, let's have a look. Okay, so this one, the reference is gone. Tampering with sensor to threat action, right? So we're gonna find threat action. Okay. All right, so let's have a look. Threat action is coming from tampering with sensors and remote execution, vulnerabilities. So where is vulnerability coming from? All right, vulnerability is coming from here. Okay, so that is correct. So threat action, okay, I think it was agreed that threat action is not based on any calculation. Exactly. So threat action is a random entry. There's no data validation to it because they're going to be applying various types of actions. Tampering with sensor. Let's have a look if there's any keyword for tampering with sensor. Exactly. So there's no data validation for that. So basically, we're going to make sure that we clear anything that has to do like anything that has to do with data validation. We're going to clear that. So we've been able to get rid of those data validation. So the threat action will be provided manually. Vulnerability will be selected from a drop-down list, right? So there's a severe. This is the risk, the level of severity for safety, level of severity for environment, for financial risk, for reputational damage, as per the risk matrix, and there's a maximum. So we're looking at the maximum, right? And then we have the unmitigated, risk level, whatever. So this section, all of these are just terminologies. I'm not too familiar with it because there's keywords that I'm not too familiar. They didn't explain it in the risk matrix, so it's not in there. Okay, but then the fact is that we understand the logic, right? So there's the initial risk level, there's the final risk level, and then the residual risk level. So we create the first report. We've already started creating the report. All right. This is equally, some parameters within the template. We can hide it somewhere. There's one report they created already that they are using the risk level to identify which of these values come to the SLT. They have something they call SLT. All right. So they have SLT somewhere here. There's the SLT. So this SLT is basically the fact that it's a VLOOKUP function. Basically, we use VLOOKUP to find the lookup value of this. The lookup value of this, right? We find the lookup value of this from this table. So if it is 6, it's going to find the 6 here, and it's going to give an estimate for this. So that's basically what we did. We use the VLOOKUP to pull these figures from here, from this very data, and then what we did was that we made sure that if any of this is blank, it should not give us the value, right? So if this is blank, it should not give us the value, just to make sure that the user have completed it before the value shows. So the model is correct. We've been able to sort of streamline the model. We did that, in our initial meeting with the user. But then the basis of this is that we are just talking about the fact that there is a risk assessment report. We're going to create a dashboard out of it. Now the logic in the report, it's not necessary to really understand. But what is important to take note is that there's an initial risk level. There's a final risk level after mitigation, and there are some recommendations, and that sort of establishes what will be the residual risk, which is the risk that you have accepted, right? The acceptable level of risk. Now, in order to sort of estimate some percentages, which we'll be working with, because we want to do some reporting on all of these risk levels. And that's going to be based on each risk ID. So there has to be a unique risk ID. Okay, so this unique risk ID must be used to determine the risk level at both ends, right? The risk level in terms of percentage, at the initial level, at the final level, and at the residual level. Because we don't want to use just numerical, we don't want to use just numbers, because the numbers do not give us any reasonable insight. So we want to be using, a score, basically, in percentage terms, right? So basically, when we go onto the risk matrix, we know that the maximum risk level is 25. So it means that if you register this or any values, in order to know how we are performing, we are pairing that against the 25, which is the maximum. Now, the overall goal is that I want to be able to reduce risk to the barest minimum. All right. So when we are comparing this to this, the more we reduce the risk levels, the lower score you're going to be getting. So we're going to look at the logic for the report. So basically we are doing it as we go. All right, I'm trying to understand this as we go, and we're going to make sense out of it, right? So what I'm going to do is that we're going to create pivot table. I've already started creating the pivot table. Now to create a pivot table is very, very simple. All you need to just Control A. But before that, you need to make sure that the table, the risk assessment table, it is in an Excel table. It should not just be random table with borders, and that could mean that some cells would have been merged and things like that. We don't want that. So we converted everything to an Excel table. So we just go to Insert, and then we go to Insert New Pivot Table, Insert Pivot Table. We go to New Worksheet. So we click on New Worksheet, and then we will try to figure out. All right, so we're going to be picking some reports. All right, so but before I can even do that, I just want to make sure that I'm able to estimate some sort of score, right? So let me just insert additional rows in additional columns, right? So this is the maximum risk level. So we're going to look at the score for this very one. All right, initial risk, we call it initial risk score. This will be the name of the title, initial risk score. So I'll just add score to it, right? And then we'll look at for the final risk level. We want to also know the final risk score. And then this one, the last one, which is the residual risk, you want to know the residual risk score, because we want to know the risk levels at both levels, right? Or the risk score at the initial risk level, the final risk level, and the residual risk level, right? So that's pretty much what we're trying to do. So how do we estimate the score? If you want to estimate the score, what we do is that we hit the equal sign. We are using this initial risk score. That is this very reference, right? So I like to use a reference. I don't want to use column header. So P6 divided by the maximum. What's the maximum of the risk level? What's the maximum? It's 25, right? So that's going to be Y6. So we've introduced some score in there. I'll just go all the way down. I change it to percentage, right? So once this is in percentage, I need to correct all the values, all these like errors that are showing. So I'm saying that if error, it should return 0, right? So that's going to clean up, it's going to clean it up. But again, I want to get rid of these zeros, this 0%, right? So I'm going to say that if this risk level is blank, right? So I'm going to put it in there again. If P6 is equal to blank, it should return blank. If not, it should return whatever is there. So that's pretty much it. We've been able to get rid of these 0% down here. That's basically cleaning up the data, right? So we're going to look at the score for the final risk level, right? For each of the risk IDs, right? So I'm going to say that, okay, what is the final? The final is here. That's T6, right? T6 divided by the maximum. The maximum of the risk level is Y6, right? So this is more like a scoring criteria that we are introducing, right? Now the same strategy that we use, we first make sure that everything is in percentage. And then what we're going to do next is that we are going to make sure that if, okay, first and foremost, let's get rid of the error, right? So that's if error. So we just if error function return 0, right? And then we are saying that the 0% that are showing down, we don't want it, right? So there has to be a logic to it. We must give that logic, which is the fact that if the final is blank, if there's no data here, we don't expect any data here as well. All right, so we go here and say if T6 is equal to blank, it should return blank. If not, it should return the value, right? And we close parentheses, right? So what it means is that we'll be able to clear those zeros down below. We'll do the same thing for the residual risk. So residual risk level is the fact that we are picking the residual risk, which is W6 divided by the maximum of the risk, right? The maximum, which is 25, right? So that's Y6. And then we're going to hit enter. And then we're going to go all the way down to change it to percentage. Okay. And then we also make sure that if there's any error, it should return 0. And then we're going to say that wherever there's 0, I mean, if here is blank, here should be blank. So it means that over here are all going to be blank, right? So we say that if W6 is equal to blank, return blank. If not, return the same value, right? So that's pretty much it. So this section is basically to estimate the risk level at the initial. So take note, following the risk assessment, when we were doing the risk assessment, the initial risk level was 24% for this very risk ID. After the risk assessment, the risk level reduced to 8%. And then there's the residual risk, which is 8%. Now take note that everything is coming from, you know, these stuff, right? So whatever you put here is what gets shown there, right? So if you have an initial risk level of 6, and after mitigation, the risk level should probably be somewhere around 4, right? Or even if it is lower, fair enough. But residual risk is the acceptable risk that should equally be lower. But maybe based on their scoring criteria, the initial, the final, and then the initial and the residual is probably the same. But that's all up to them, right? All right. So what we're going to do is that once we've been able to estimate the various risk levels in percentage terms, right? That is the scoring criteria that we've applied to it. We can now be able to, you know, generate reports for these risk levels, right? The initial risk level in terms of a score, the final risk level in terms of a score, and then the residual risk in terms of a score. Now we can apply this score on all the risk IDs, which means that each unique entry within the row would have all of these parameters. And then we can have an overall risk level, which is after mitigation, which is probably the final one, and the residual risk level, right? So we can do that. So once we've been able to introduce this, what we're going to do is that, now take note, this very section, we've not populated any data. What we are trying to do here as well is that we can assign an action to a responsible person, and we can know the status of it. Now, let me quickly do that in the approved list, right? So we need to have another list for responsible persons, right? So we have to make sure that we are predefining list of responsible persons. So responsible persons. All right. And then again, we need to have another table for action status, right? Action status. And the action status will be basically open and close, right? Open and close. Responsible persons, we could have any names at all, random names. It could be my first name, my second name, my third name, right? Or the name of the user, right? So I'm just going to put in an Excel table. We're going to expand the table. Okay, so this is where we try to do a bit of data validation, okay? So I'll just extend the table to accommodate a lot more data, because here probably they're going to be entering a lot of data. So let me just, you know, create that space. I need to create a lot of space for it. All right. And then I'm just going to format data, because I usually don't like this kind of colors. I want to keep it simple, right? I want to keep it simple. And then just bring in some borders. And then I'm just going to copy the paintbrush and paste it here. I want to look like this. Same with the, you know, the action status. All right. All right. So that's pretty much it. Ladies and gentlemen, just give me a couple of seconds. I'm in a meeting. Oh. Hello. All right. So basically what we're doing is that we're going to make sure that we are actually making sure that the parameters are all properly aligned. When I inserted the table, I didn't indicate that it has a header, so you pushed it down, right? So I just want to make sure that I do that right away. All right. Okay, so I just want to excuse myself a little bit. I'll be back shortly. All right, so we're back again, and we're just gonna, go right into it. So basically, over here, what we're doing is that we're just gonna format it quickly because we want to keep it the same, consistent, right? All right. So this section is basically for open and close, but they can actually add on additional parameters if they want. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go straight into the risk assessment report. I'm gonna make here data validation as well. So data validation is very, very important in almost every template that we develop because that's how we keep the names consistent so that they do not change. All right, so the same thing for action status. All right, this one too, we could make it. I mean, we could do all of that to the end, but ideally we could just pick these two only so that they cannot add any additional because we are only focusing on open and close, right? So we could do that. We could just say, okay, open. You can just, put some random entries in there just to get some dummy data for the report. Responsible persons. Also, we can just, provide some names in there. All right, and here could be anything at all, right? We could put anything at all. So we put in random entry just for dummy data, okay? All right, so basically this is just to introduce action status, but take note that whenever we are having this kind of action status, we want to make sure that, we would apply conditional formatting to it. And we make sure that we are choosing the only format cell that contains a particular text, right? So open, and for open, we want to say that open should be red fill, right? The font should be white. And then I'm supposed to just continue. And then we continue with the, I could just click on add. Instead of just closing it, I forgot and I closed it by mistake, right? So we just continue with add closed, open, closed, right? And then we go to customize format, we do a fill and we choose this one. Font color should be white, right? Okay, so when we go in there, you notice that all of them are now like showing like this, which means that we've been able to introduce some action tracking into the risk assessment report, which is fantastic, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to quickly proceed to our report. We're going to pick the first reference, right? And we're going to look at the initial risk. Now, let me just refresh the workbook because since I introduced those columns, I did not refresh the workbook. So once I refresh, all of them populate in here. So I'm going to pick the initial risk score, right? I'm going to go to field setting, and I'll choose an average. I don't want sum, because if you pick sum, it's going to sum up the contents. So it should rather be average. Okay, so I'm just going to go to field setting. I go to number format. I choose percentage. I remove the decimal place, right? So now I have the risk score. There are some that we are getting some, not available. Let's go check what's going on. Want to make sure that every report in there is showing something, right? Okay, so let me just make sure that all of these are unique. All right, all of them are unique. Okay, I'll just refresh all. So RF10 and the blank RF. Okay, let me just pick this and have a look at it. Why we are having that? I'll do a fine. That's this one, huh? So what's going on with this? So something was not selected. They didn't do risk rating for it. Okay, so every entry must have a risk analysis, right? There should be a risk analysis on it. So let's do that quickly. All right, so we're gonna put something random entry in there, and then we put another random entry in there. All right, so I'll just refresh the workbook and I go to the report, right? Now it has updated. So this is basically initial risk score. So we have something that looks like an initial risk score. And because we now created a pivot table, we need to start cleaning pivot table up. We're going to clean the sheets. We get rid of the grid lines. We right click and go to pivot table options. We tell the table that we don't need it to auto fit the width upon update. We don't need that. We also want to make sure that it does not retain any deleted items, because sometimes when you delete something from the workbook and then you refresh, you come back, you probably still see it in the pivot table and it's crazy. So we want to make sure we get rid of all of this. We go to the design and we choose the one that I prefer. We can change the size of the font. We make it light. I like this one very much, Calibri light. And then I will increase this to 12, right? Okay, so basically what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to be inserting a graph, but take note that risk ID could be a lot. Risk ID could be a lot of parameters. You can have risk ID up to 100 because there's a lot of entries in there. Each row is a unique ID. So what it means is that it will not be reasonable to estimate reports based on risk ID, but it will rather be reasonable to look at it based on risk level, which is the zone. So this initial risk score, let me just try to introduce the zones, within it, right? I'm going to go to pivot table field list and the zone. I'll just bring it above it, which means that we are rather looking at it from the context of the zone. So there's level 0 all the way to level 3.5, right? That's what it's within the database. This is what we can actually visualize. We could close it like, we can close it like this, and we know the risks, the various zones, and their scores. All right, so take note that these terminologies are not the generic health and safety, stuff that we know, but they are actually something that's specific to cyber risk assessment. All right, so what we're going to do next is that, as far as this very sheet is concerned, what we're going to do is that we're going to introduce a calculated field for that to give us the target. The target should be 100, right? So I'm going to click on pivot table, go to pivot table, analyze, go to fields item, go to calculated field, and we're going to introduce the target, right? So just another field that we want to introduce, but that field is based on a calculation. The calculation is just 1, right? So we click on 1, it introduces it here. We go to the target that we just introduced, we go to field settings, and we go to number format. We choose percentage, right? And then we get rid of any decimal, we hit OK. All right, so now we've been able to introduce the target in here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a slicer. The slicer will be for the zone, and then I'll have it right here. So with the slicer, we can equally, resize it nicely. We can actually resize it nicely. We can expand it to look nicer. All right. And with this zone, you can get rid of the blank, right? Once you select this, you can exclude the blank. So the blank is not going to show. So I just click on insert. I go to, so with this type of report, I probably want to use bar chart, right? So let's go with a bar chart, clustered bar chart, right? So the clustered bar chart, take note that we can always tweak around. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to create a target bar chart, okay? For creating target bar chart, you need the initial score and then you need a target. So all of them are within the, within the chart. There are two separate data series, right? So we're going to do something. We're going to make sure that we right click, format data series, and then we overlap it. So one is on top of the other. All right. And then what we're going to do is that we want to make sure that we go back to the pivot table. We want to make sure that the target is above. All right. So the target, we move it above the average so that on the chart it's going to go behind it, right? So this one is something we did yesterday. So we right click on, I'll close the pivot table because I don't need it for now. I'll close it. And then I'll rather focus on the data series, format data series for the one behind, which is the target. We're going to give it a fill. The fill is going to be gray, right? And then we're going to give it a border. The border to be a solid fill is going to be gray. And we're going to increase the size. Let's give it like, let's say 6, right? 6 is better. Let's give it 6. Okay, so basically what it means is that we've been able to introduce it and it shows around the chart. We're going to make this one, we're going to give it a fill. We're going to give it this type of color. I like this one very much, right? So I can get rid of some of these axes. The axis, basically we delete it and then we leave this one, okay? So I'm going to change the format. I want it to be black. I always like the Century Gothic font. I go to chart elements, add design. Okay, design, add chart element. I go to add chart title, right? Chart title above. And this one will be like initial risk scores, right? Initial risk scores. So basically, based on the activities, you can actually open it up to look at the contents like this. You can see, you can keep opening up to look at the contents like this, but you can actually collapse to see the high level data, right? Because there's the very detailed one within each one of them, which gives us the score, and then there's a high level data which we can collapse, right? So we are estimating the initial risk level based on a scoring criteria. So we are not done. We're just going to add data label, and then this data label, it could be outside, it could be inside, but usually we like it to be inside. So I'll just format data series, format data label. I'll shift it inside. It has to be inside in the base, right? And then I can change the font color to white. I could increase the font a little bit to this, right? So that is initial risk level. Now take note that this very data here, we are looking at the scoring for each of the levels, but within the levels there are risk IDs, which means that we're looking at each of the risk that we've identified. And then again, we can estimate an overall risk level. Take note, the overall risk level is the average that's here. So that's something we're going to be doing later on. And I may probably just do that right away because I'm going to be creating copies of this very sheet for the other one. So I'm going to do that right away, right? Now, given the fact that we have this column, we have this column, we have this column, I want to pick the value for this and the value for this. I want to pick this value, right? So if I'm saying grand total average of initial, it should give me this. How do I do that? I'm going to be using index and match function, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the exact name that is here, right? I click on it. I just click on it to select it from here. I'll just Control C. Then I come here, I paste it there, right? And then I come here, I click on this. All right. And then I paste it here. Okay. Now take note that sometimes you can get rid of these sum functions. You can have sum of, count of. This stuff you can always get rid of them. That the terminology is probably appealing to everyone. Initial risk score. Nobody like to see average of and things like that. So this name that I've selected, I'm gonna copy the same thing. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna paste here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna use an index function, right? All right, so the index basically is like a GPS, right? So where is the data? Where is the data we're looking to pick, right? We're picking it from here, we go all the way down. There's no potential for it to extend, but maybe it could extend. So let's try to give room for potential increase in data, right? We can actually lock it. To lock it, if you are using Mac Windows, you can press F4. If you are using Mac, is Command T, right? So we're gonna lock those point that we've selected. We're gonna lock this one as well. So Command T, we're gonna lock this one as well. You get it? And then we follow by the match function, right? So the match function is like almost like VLOOKUP, but it's gonna go on the one is gonna be like column, one is gonna be like the row level, right? So match, we're gonna look up value. The lookup value is gonna be first and foremost the lookup value. We're gonna look up the value for grand total. So grand total is T6, right? So T6. Okay, it's not T6, it's T5, right? T5. Okay, T4 rather. So it's T4, and then we go to the lookup array. Now T4 is here, right? So there's the lookup array. We go all the way down to the last range. Okay, all right, and then we want exact match. So it's gonna be 0. We want an exact match. We close it, and then we go to the other side, right? Again, match function. Where is the other lookup value? The lookup value is this one, U4, right? U4, and then where is the lookup array? It is here. So we select this. All right. We can choose to lock these ones as well. We'll be locking them because we won't lock it because there's nothing else to pick. We're only picking this and that, right? So once we are done with this, okay, then we want the exact match, and then we close the parentheses, we close again, and we hit enter. So that's pretty much it. We've been able to pick the value, we pick the score, so we apply the percentage. So that's exactly what we have here. That's the 43. We have the 43 right here, right? So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to insert a score because we're going to need that. All right. So I'm going to create a what do you call it? A donut chart, right? A progress chart. Progress chart, we use donut chart. So I'm going to do the remainder. What's the remainder of 43, right? Over 100, the remainder of 43 is going to be 1 minus 43, right? So 1 minus 43 is 57. But then again, we are saying that if for any reason this is more than 100, this should not be negative, right? So we're going to take note of that, and we say if this value, this entire value, right? So I'm just going to put it in brackets and do it well. If this entire value is less than 0, it should return 0. If not, it should return the same value, right? Well, we're going to copy this, Control C, I paste it here, and then I close parentheses, I hit enter, right? So we've been able to do something. If this one is more than 100, for example, assuming we get 120, here it should be 0. It should not be negative something, right? There's a reason to that, because once you plot a donut chart and you go beyond, or you create a progress chart and go beyond 100, then it distorts the remainder because it's not very clear and it's going to look weird, right? So now that we have this corrected, we're going to go to pivot. We're going to go to donut charts. We insert a donut chart here, and that's what we're going to use for the dashboard. Okay, so I've just done that ahead of time. I don't want to waste too much time. I've done that ahead of time. Maybe it's better I even start to design it nicely, right? So I don't know the color we're going to use yet for the dashboard, but we will probably figure it out. But then I'm done with this one. Okay, now the rest will be, and it's better we format it on the dashboard as opposed to this one. So these are, I was trying to proceed creating this report, but I'll just delete them because I just want to make sure you guys are going through the process that we are following. Okay, so I'll just delete these ones as well. All right, so I'm going to create another copy of it, and this copy I'll call it final risk score. Final risk score, right? All right, so final risk score, because after initial risk, before mitigation, after mitigation, there will be the final one. And then we later look at the residual risk score. All right, so this is the final risk score. We're going to change it and call it final risk score. So the only thing I'm supposed to do is that I'm supposed to simply go into the pivot table, and then I will remove the initial. I'll just pick final, right? So instead of initial, I'll choose final, and I'll make sure it's right here at the bottom. I'll change it to average, and then I'll make sure that there's no decimal, right? So I'll go to percentage, and I'll get rid of any decimals, right? And I hit enter. So the same thing, you notice. Okay, so now what I'm supposed to do is that I'm supposed to make sure that the parameters are still the same. So I get rid of this. I copy the entry here, and I come to replace here. I post it over there, exactly the name, right? Then it's gonna update. So we've been able to replicate same here. If I want to get the same format of this chart, I'll just copy it and paste over it like this, and I have that also. Now the next I'm going to do is another sheet, which is the residual risk level, right? The residual risk level. So that is the risk level that is accepted. This is the residual one, the one that organization has decided to accept as an acceptable risk, because you can never reduce risk to zero. If you want to reduce risk to zero, what it simply means is that you stop operation, right? However, every risk has some reward, right? That's why we always look at risk and opportunity, right? Because whatever has risk has some profit, has some potential profit. So we want to make sure you're managing the risk and not to suspend operation altogether. So with this one, also simple, we're going to just, quickly go in there and then change the final to residual, right? So the residual is right there, residual risk level, right? We're going to bring it down here. We're going to change it from count off to average off, right? And then we go to the format, we choose percentage, and then we get rid of those entries, right? Okay, perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the average off. As I did mention, we can always remove the average off. All right, I think I deleted it altogether. So I'm just going to get rid of the average off. All right, and then I'll just come here and then paste the same thing here because that's the same name, right? So 16 is the progress. Okay, so now we've been able to introduce these three levels of risk, both looking at the various, parameters, level 0, level 1, level 2. That's the companies, basically how they are naming some of the parameters. But the most important thing is that we're able to estimate risk based on the risk ID, and the risk ID are categorized on the various levels, right? So that's pretty much it. And what again can I do? What again? Let's go back to the risk assessment. What type of report again can I generate from this? Okay, so we can probably look at how many risk IDs have been generated. So in order to do that, we can simply, we can create another copy, because the number of risk IDs within the template equally tells us that we have covered a lot of scope, right? So risk IDs, right? Risk IDs and their scores. Risk ID and their score. So that means that every unique entry which we register with a risk ID, we can find their score, right? So in that, even with that, we can do initial, final, and all of that. So I'm just going to remove the zone. So we have it here. We can then even bring the other one. So there's another twist we can introduce, right? You can even bring the initial. You can bring the final, all of that within it. So initial is going to be at the top. The final is going to follow up. And then the serial continues, right? So we're going to also, so this is like another level to the report, right? So we're going to convert this to average. We're going to go to percentage. And then we just change the percentage, right? And then we do the same thing for the other one. Okay, and the average and another, basically percentage, remove the score. Okay, and another one. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another report for action tracking, right? Okay, this is average already. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that. Okay, so basically, there's another type of report where each of the risk ID, we can tell you the fact that we started from here, we got here, and all of that. Okay, because the target is always at the back, or probably not really necessary. We can rather focus on the initial. That's something we can agree with the user later on. So with this one, I can remove the initial as well. I can get rid of the average. I can remove the average. I can get rid of the final and have the residual. So this one, like this, maybe what is important is the fact that you can just see it in a tabular form as opposed to having it on a chart like this. So, all right, that is okay, right? You can have it like this. Put a data label in here. And the data label, we can put data label in here as well. Data label in here as well. We format data label. We bring it to center. This one also center. All right, let's make it end. This one to be end inside the end. And this one inside the end. Okay, so this one is not so insightful. I don't think it really makes sense like this. Perhaps it's just better to leave it as stable, right? So we're just gonna get rid of this. It's better we leave it as stable because we can actually look at how things have transpired, because the fact is that we're gonna have a long list of risk IDs. If you have 100 entries, you're gonna have 100 risk IDs. So there's no point putting it on a graph. So this is more like a summary report. We could add the risk levels to it, but we don't want to do that. We just want to make sure that we are able to estimate how many risk IDs are within the table, right? So the last report I'm going to be creating from this will be action status. So action status should be open and closed, right? And then probably responsible person. So I'm just going to create another pivot table, insert pivot table, and we're going to look at the people whom actions have been assigned to, right? So I'm going to move it here. I click on the pivot table. I'll get rid of this. So the pivot table is right here. And then I'll just choose a responsible person, right? How many actions have been assigned to them? So we have that here. Responsible persons. All right, so this first hour we are using to structure the table and the report, and then the dashboard could be very fast. Okay. All right, so this one quickly we change the format of the pivot table. We go to pivot table options. We go to the data tab. We make sure that it does not auto fit column width and all of that. And then we can change the color of it. We quickly do that. We bring it to the one that we like. We increase the font size. We go to view. We remove the grid. We can make it bigger like this. The font is 12. All right, we did that. So I'm insert a chart, right? I think that we are using column bar chart in all of them. So let's stick to bar chart. All right, so I'll just insert a slicer for the persons, right? Slicer, responsible person, right? All right, so responsible persons. Now, one thing about Mac is that if you're using Mac to plot some of these pivot tables, sometimes the field will be showing on the chart. The fields, it will be showing on the chart, and it doesn't make it look nicer. So I usually have a way of trying to get rid of these fields. So I just come to some template that I have in here, and then I'll just choose, let's say, a bar cluttered chart like this. Then it gets rid of those type of stuff that I don't like. I can then reduce the size a bit, increase the width a bit. Then I could, rather, work from this one as opposed to the original template. I mean, original chart templates. Those stuff on MacBook, it doesn't look, you can't see those fields that will be showing on the chart. So sometimes there are instances where those fields will be showing when you open it on Windows laptop, but because we are using Mac, you cannot see it. So you need to sort of test the template on a Windows laptop to make sure that those stuff are not showing on the chart. But there are instances where you could probably see that on the chart because we missed getting rid of those ones, right? So what it means is that all of this stuff that I did, right? So all of this stuff, it's better I quickly fix it because I don't have time to test it on Mac. Sorry, on a Windows laptop. So I just come to cluttered bar here. It's going to change it for me. I'm going to reset it again. Then I'll just overlap everything. I would sort of increase the width of it. All right. I'll just quickly work on the format that was there before. So the fill was a gray fill. And then the border tool is a solid border fill. I'll make it gray as well. And then the width of the border is 6. Okay, so I quickly do that. And then this one was inside the format data label, right? If I go to format data label, it was inside, and then it was, it was bigger, and probably 12, right? And then the font was 1 centric, and then the font color is darker. So I'll just change this one back to white, right? Then I'm going to make it bigger. Let's say 12, right? So we brought it back quickly. So I'll just make sure that I replicate it on all of this. All right, so we've been able to do that, right? So the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create another report for action status, right? So that's the last report we're going to be creating. So action status is basically the fact that the action must be open or closed, right? So we go to the pivot table, we come all the way down. The status, we bring it here. Remove the responsible person. All right, remove the responsible person. And then the status, count the status, right? So this action status. Right, so without wasting time, let's move very fast. So this action status, I'm going to replicate the same format of the chart by pasting it over it. Then I can drag it here, right? So I can now start to create my dashboard. So the dashboard, I bring it all the way here, and I call it dashboard, right? So as far as this dashboard is concerned, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 entries, right? So let's see which ones are relevant, because sometimes the dashboard is not everything that can go on the dashboard, right? So maybe we're gonna have this one here. We're gonna have so the initial is there, the final is also there, and then the residual. So the residual risk is equally there. I'll just take it there. So we have 3 risk levels, right? 3 risk levels. The initial, okay, so they have to fit nicely on the dashboard. Now we don't have space here. We need to make sure that we are optimizing our space. Always the page percentage should be 100 so that it doesn't, misrepresent what we are planning to do. Sometimes you create a dashboard and you only to realize that the screen percentage is probably 60%. So if somebody changes back to 100, it's going to look too big and it wouldn't fit on the screen. So I want to make sure that It's exactly what it is, 100%. So all the adjustment you're going to be doing will not distort when you open it on another worksheet or another Excel on another computer, right? So we have the final, we have the initial, final, and then residual. So what we're going to do is that we're going to bring all those scores that we introduced, right? So the scores are here. This is the first score for the initial. So we're going to bring it here. And maybe it's going to be up. We can actually do it such that it to be up, looking very nice on top. So basically what we are doing is that we are trying to create a dashboard, but we don't know how we're going to be doing. We don't know the color we're going to be using. So that's quite interesting, right? As opposed to creating a dashboard when we are very clear on everything we're going to be using. That's how I prefer to do this. So this is basically behind the scene of how we've been creating some of the dashboards, right? Okay, so I'm going to pick the last one, which is the residual risk. The risk level is here, the overall risk level for the residual, right? Okay, so that's pretty much it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be resizing it. Now let's go and see what other report can we introduce. We could probably bring, if there's space for it, we'll figure out if there's really space for it. Sometimes if there's no space for it, we might probably ignore it, right? Because we already have a report for it. So action status also, if there's no space for it, we could just use a label on the dashboard to represent open and close, not necessarily the need to use a chart, right? All right, so we have these parameters in there. Let me just go to each of the dashboards and report and make sure that the slices we're going to be using are already connected, right? So I want to make sure I connect all of them because we want to make sure each slicer controls each of the reports, right? So the slices we introduce are only the zones, right? So that's pretty much it. So we just bring the zone somewhere here. All right, so the zone could be on the side. We could figure out where to place it, right? So with how many elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So with 5 elements, with these ones, how do I create a dashboard, right? So what I'm going to do is that I need to first and foremost resize all of them, right? I'm going to resize them equally. So I'm going to just start to resize. Maybe it should be like, so it's going to be like 2 or 2.5, right? 2.5. And then the width is going to be like 3. All right, so something like this is okay, but I think we can increase it further. All right, we can do it like this, 4, 2.5 and 4. Okay, let's see. As long as there is space to accommodate it on the dashboard, why not? If there's no space, we're going to resize it further. Okay, and then this one also, we're going to resize to make sure that they are all the same. So this also, we're going to probably give it 2. And here is equally going to be 2. All right, so we sort of reduced it. Oops. All right, so we sort of reduced this. What we're going to do is that we're going to start formatting the elements of the dashboard. So we're going to clear the outline of the chart. We're going to do the same thing for this. Clear the outline, right? Okay, so now I just have to make sure that I'm arranging them well. Maybe I'm going to do them like this. Okay, so at least we have this, and this. We can align it nicely. Center it. It's properly aligned. This and this, we're going to align it nicely. And then this is going to come closer. So we just select all 3. We would align it to the middle. We make it distribute horizontally nicely. And then this one and this properly aligned. Middle. And then we want to make sure that this equally aligns with this, right? So it has to be all properly aligned, right? This one equally must align together, right? All right, so I think we have aligned them. Now this and this should be at the center. All right, same with this should be at the center, right? All right, this and this should equally be at the center. Oops, sorry, it's supposed to be center, right? Center. All right, so once we've centered them, then let's see what happens. What that means that our dashboard is probably taking shape, but maybe we need to, okay, this and this must equally be aligned to the middle. And we can shift it further down. Okay, so what else are we supposed to be doing? This initial risk level, final risk level, residual risk level. And this can actually control everything. So we're going to insert a text box, but take note, the color scheme, we've still not decided on the color scheme. So let me try to start working on the background, right? So the background is going to be like this. Okay. And then with the background, I always like to basically pick some colors from the internet. With a lot of platforms where you can pick color scheme, you know, seek colors, color wheel, all of that. There are a lot of colors that you can choose from, right? A lot of color palettes, right? So I'm just going to look at a color that is nice. All right, so we're going to pick a very nice color for the background. Usually the background must be very light, okay? Okay, so let me just choose something. This one. I'm going to choose a background like this. I'll format data, format shape. And I go to here. And I enter here. So this is the background I'm going to be using. All right, no outline for the chart. I'm going to make it make the shape like it must have a shadow. Okay. Then I'm going to you know, clean the sheet. I don't need the grid lines yet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I need to sort of put it behind. So let's see, send it back. This is how it looks. Okay, so this is the first level of the background. You can insert another background, and that's probably going to be this. You want to make sure that maybe these ones have their own background. Okay. All right, so let me just do it like this. This one will have its own background. This one too will have their own background. Just bring it all the way down like this. Okay, so these ones, I could probably just make it background for each one of them, but I could just do all of them like this. Okay, so let's just assume it's all going to be like this. And what color scheme can we introduce? Do we want something darker or something lighter? Okay, so for now, let's try to go with the black. For now, we're going to see. We can change it later on. Okay. Or we could probably choose something else. Yesterday, I chose orange, which is a very good color. Okay, so basically we have started the analysis paralysis, right? Because that's pretty much what I do many times, analysis paralysis, right? So I'm gonna just select something. I don't want to do analysis paralysis today, so I'll just try and, you know, move very fast with what we are settling. We can change it later on. So I'm gonna choose this one. So I'm gonna get rid of the outline. No outline. It has to be a shadow, right? Okay, so maybe the background is going to be this. And what it means is that if the background is that, then it is probably appropriate to make the background the same sort of color scheme, but a much lighter one. All right, so this probably will do. Okay, so at least once I have this here, all right, then what it means is that I could make all of these ones like that. So I just Control C. Then I would bring it here. and then I sort of resize it. I'll increase it. Okay, Control V. I'm gonna do it for this as well. Control V, paste here. I'm gonna paste here as well. I'm gonna paste here as well. So that's pretty much the background. We are trying to, sort of set them up right now. We want to make sure that there's enough spacing in between. Okay. So what we can do is I can start to align them properly. I'm gonna align this middle. I'm gonna align this one also middle. And then I'm gonna, select these ones as well to the center. I'm gonna align this one to the center. And then this one is gonna be there. Okay, so what it means is that we've been able to introduce some background, which is cool. I'll probably increase the size a little bit here. All right, and maybe I should increase this one also a little bit. Right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all of them. And I'm gonna move it back, right? And then I'm gonna select the background and move it back as well. So it's gonna go behind that one. And that automatically brings this one in front, right? So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna clear all of these fills. All right, I don't want any fill. I don't want any fill and any outline. All right, so we're still gonna clean it up further. All right, so what we're gonna do next is that we need to choose a color that is really nice, right? So once we have that, let's probably choose a color that contrasts it. Maybe yellow or something, right? Let's see. I double click on this. First and foremost, I click on both data series because these are 2 data points. I'll just, choose no border, right? There should be no border. And I'm going to double click on this first data point, and I'm going to choose. I need to figure out which color is nice, right? Okay, let's choose a deeper color. A deeper color, right? Let's go for a deeper color. Okay, and then here is gonna be the same color, but you give it a transparency of 90%. We can change it later on. Okay, something that contrasted, maybe is probably orange or something. We can probably decide on that. It could be orange, right? So usually when it comes to creating these dashboards, you just have to do some, trials to see which one is nicer. Let's go for yellow. Let's go for yellow. Yellow is the best, huh? So I'm gonna be using yellow. Yes, I'm gonna be using yellow, right? Yellow is the best. I think yellow is a good contrast to blue. So we're gonna pick yellow. All right, perfect. I think we've discovered what exactly you're supposed to be using. So the first one is gonna be yellow. And then the other one, we give it a 90% transparency, right? We can later on make it bigger. Same with this one. We can bring some border, some shadow to the progress. Okay. Later on, I could do something else. I mean, I could do some changes later on, right? So let's take it easy. I could probably make it much deeper or something. So with this one, we could make the background equally light yellow. All right, so we're gonna sort of basically we're gonna fix all of that. So when it comes to creating dashboard, sometimes try and error, basically playing around with the colors to see which one looks nicer. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're doing. We're just playing with the colors to see which one looks nicer, and then we can make a decision on which one to use, right? So with this one, I will probably change it. So maybe we should rather go for darker blue or something. So darker blue is gonna it's gonna make it stand out, or something much bolder, right? So let's give it a try on some of these colors. Let's see which one we can use. I think that I'll probably go for this one. All right, so I'll probably have to bring back the background. It has to be just gray. Okay, let's just keep it like this. All right, so the percentage, the width between should be like maybe 10, right? 10 is better. 10 is better. And this one is, okay, it's big already, right? Okay, so now that we have those entries in there, this one could be here. All right, so this one is going to be the initial risk. I'm going to quickly hit the equal sign, go to initial risk score. The score is here. I hit enter. I do the same thing for this, equal sign for the final risk score. I hit enter. And I do the same thing for this, equal sign for the residual risk. I hit enter. Okay, and then I can play around, right? I'll just clear the formatting. So the fill, no outline. And then the font color is gonna be yellow as well, and it's gonna be very big, like 28. Then I'm gonna choose this font, Sego UI symbol, right? Now just put it in the middle. Okay, so it's in the middle in there. I'll just center it. All of this stuff, we can change them later on. So what I'm doing is basically, I'm just trying to figure out what color looks nicer, right? All right, so when it comes to this, we'll probably have to we can align it. We can reduce the size. We can reduce the size of the donor chart. We can make it 90. All right, and then this one is gonna be in the middle. Okay, so now that we have this, maybe this is better if we sort of, keep them separate. That is better, right? All right, so basically we need to make sure that all of these are properly centered, but we need to make sure that we have selected all of them. Each one of them should be connected to their backgrounds, right? So this one, I just have to shift it a little bit here. I'm gonna align all of them properly when I'm done. So this one and this should be properly aligned. This one should properly align with the background. So we are sort of grouping them already. And then this one as well. And this one as well. That's properly centered and aligned. Same with this. And I want to make sure each one of them is properly at the center, right? This one, same here, properly centered. Same with this, right? All right, so we are progressing steadily with the dashboard. Take note that we can estimate risk level for each one of them. We need to make room for the titles for this very one. But we need to make sure that we have space also. So just bring it a little bit down. So we have some space at the top. Just increase it. So I'll just insert a shape again. And that's gonna be our title. And this one is like a risk how do you call it? Risk assessment dashboard. Okay, so with this one, I've not really figured out a font that I probably use, but I'll just try and pick anything at all. Let's say we go with this. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna introduce the border of the shape. I'm gonna introduce a gradient fill, right? And then the gradient fill is gonna be yellow and maybe white or something. So this one is gonna be yellow, and then this one is gonna be another color. It could be any color, right? Let's say light blue. So you notice that there's a fill around it. I could equally do same for all of them, but let's see how it goes. So now that I have these stuff here, I need to sort of introduce some numbers here, right? Or if I like, I could rather shift these ones here. And then I'm gonna create some numbers here, right? Okay, so let's see what numbers I could provide there. These numbers could be action status, open and close, right? So I'm just gonna create another space here. And we're gonna account for I think it's better this way. All right, so basically the next stage of this dashboard is the fact that we just have to make sure that we are bringing in some numbers, some labels. Okay, so these labels would pretty much be the what we want to count, right? So we want to count the number of risk IDs. We're going to look at the number of risk IDs. So here I'm going to be bringing in some labels, right? So I think I need to create more room to bring the labels up. Okay. Time is fast spent, so I'll probably just make sure that we finish before 2 hours. We are almost done, so I just want to make sure that I have the number of risk ID. How many are they, right? So I'm going to use the count. I'm going to use count A, right? Count A sort of counts all the items that are represented in this very column. Let's keep going. There's potential for a lot more to be introduced. And then, I hit enter. You notice that it's counting all of them, including the header titles, right? And then the grand total. So I'm going to make sure that I take them out. So -2, that makes 11. And then what else? The levels, right? The levels. How many levels? Okay, so the levels, the action status. How many actions? So how many actions are they? So regarding actions, that's the grand total. Grand total, right? So with the grand total, we just use the VLOOKUP function. And then the lookup value is the X for the lookup table. And then we are picking the second column, right? And it has to be an exact match. And if error, it should return 0. All right. Same with this one. If error, return 0. But of course, with this one, there's not going to be potential for any error. But just to be on the safer side. All right. So we are counting how many risk IDs have been registered, and then how many actions have been registered. This is what we can talk about. We can actually account for. So I'm just going to insert some text box and shape. So I'm going to, text box. So text box is going to feature in there. It's going to be 2 of them. Control V, paste. One is going to be like the smaller for the title. All right, the title could be bigger like that. This one too could be big like this. You can later reduce the size. So I'm just going to bring both of them here. So one is going to be up, one is going to be down, right? And I'm going to have a shape to underline it. A line to sort of fill it, right? And that line is going to be yellow as well. I'll probably want the size to be bigger and visible enough. All right, so this one is gonna be blank fill, no fill, right? No fill. Outline also no fill. This one also no fill, right? So there's gonna be number of risk registered or risk registered. So this one is going to be like white font. All right. Go to the risk. The risk that have been registered in this template is 11 of them. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I select the font color, right? Font is going to be yellow as well. It's going to be bigger. I'm going to choose this one. It's going to be very big. Maybe 28. Similar to this, 28, right? And this one is going to be this very one. And it'll be like 14. What's the size of this? Just 16, right? So let's keep it consistent. 16. All right, so we have this in there. We need to sort of group it, but it has to be properly aligned. I don't know. All right. So this is grouped. And then we're going to do same for the other one. So this is action registered, actions, right? So number of risk, number of actions. All right, so number of actions also, we're going to just use the equal sign. And we go to the normal action status and we select action status. Yes, the action register, right? We hit enter. So basically it's the same number because number of action, every risk has an action on all of that. So that's okay. All right, so the last one, I think this font size is very big. We could probably reduce it. It's supposed to be like 16. Same for this. All right, so what I'm going to do next is that I need to probably center these ones, right? Because I extended them. So let me ungroup again. And let's see the size. The size should be the same as this. 4.26. So I'm just going to make sure that it's the same, right? All right, so I'll just make sure that it is properly aligned with this, centered properly, but let's make sure that this one centers first. And then we're going to group, and then we're going to make sure that it centers with that one also. In fact, it should center with all of them because they're all properly aligned. You have to make sure that they're all aligned in the center. And this one should align first with this. And then it should align with this as well. And we can group them. In fact, we're going to, okay, not yet. We need to center this. No, this one first. And group, center with this. All right, so that's pretty much what it is. So we can take, all right, so I'm going to do something really, really quick. I want to make sure I space them out again vertically. All right, so this I need to horizontally distribute, right? So I've sort of distributed them. So what I'm going to do is I need to do some titles. Some titles should feature in there, right? So let me just try to bring it down a little bit so that we can make room at the top for it. So let's ungroup again. All right, so this one I'll ungroup as well. So I need to create space at the top, right? Okay, so let's see the size. That's 217. So let's do the same for this one. Right, so I'll just make sure that it is aligned in the middle. And then I'm going to shift it up a little bit. This one can come down a little bit. All right, so I just want to make sure that everything is going on smooth right now. All right, so I'm going to shift it down a little bit here to make room for the space at the top. So I'm going to insert text box. So this text box is going to be no fill, no outline, and then the content is going to be initial risk level. All right, so with the initial risk level, I'm going to put it in the middle. The font is this one. It is 16. And I think that's it. So we have the next one, which is the Control V. We paste it here. All right, this one is for final risk level. And then we paste here. and there's gonna be residual risk level, right? All right, so residual risk level and all of that. So basically, we want to make sure that it's properly at the center, right? So we just go to center. We should center that. Then we should group that. Both of them should center, and then we group it, right? Same with this. Center and group, and both center with the back and group. Same with this. Center and group, and center again and group. All right, so we've been able to do that. So initial risk level, these are the levels for each of the score. After mitigation, the risk level reduced further, and then following recommendation, the risk level comes here, right? So basically, when you're applying the filter, everything changes accordingly. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to insert some symbols, right? So I think that we are on track. I just have to insert some symbols. So these symbols also, it takes, for me, when it comes to everything that I need to choose, and there are quite a lot of them, I suffer a little bit of analysis paralysis, right? So let's see how that goes. All right, so we have barely 9 minutes more to go. Now this thing can come here. We could even have slicer for open and close as well, okay? But that's if it's necessary. All right, so we don't want to overthink it. We're just gonna select anything that comes up right here. It's still loading. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need 9, right? I need 9 of them. So far I've selected 4, and it's still loading. Okay, I need some more. It's taking time to load though. Okay. All right, so I think that's it. I'm just going to choose this ones because time is fast ticking. All right, so I'm going to just reduce the size to 0.5. All right, I change it all to white, and then I just drag everything. I make sure that I bring it in front, right? Bring it in front, and I drag everything, just make sure that I copy everything, right? All right, bring it here, and then I start to distribute, right? So this one is going to go to this. This one is going to go to another one here. This one is going to go to this. This one is going to go to this. And this one is going to go to, oops. And then this one. That's the whole point with Excel. Sometimes it tends to, so all of these are going to repeat. Control V. I'm going to paste it here. Control V. I'm going to paste it here because they're all the same, right? And then this one is going to come here. And then this one is probably going to go here, right? All right, so literally we are done with this template. I'll just quickly group them together. There's no time, right? I could just try to align all of this as well, but that's going to take some time. I'll just adjust them later on. So I'll just group this. I'll group this to this. I'll group this to this. this to this, this to this, this to this, this to this, and this to this. All right, so basically when it comes to this very one, I'll have to probably ungroup first. All right, so I just have to make sure that there is space for it. So I'm going to shift it a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to group this, select that, select the background, and group. So now I can just group all of them, group all of them like this, together with this, together with this, together with this, and the background. And I just group all. All right, so I just make sure that I go to format, size, the properties. It should not move when we resize the cell, right? All right, so basically this is a risk assessment. And as you can see from the database that we were looking at, we're looking at the various risk levels. You know, before doing the risk assessment, we had an initial risk level. After mitigation, we have another risk level, which is a final risk level, and this is the residual risk. Okay, that is pretty much, guys, we've been able to nail it. We can further resize, but time is not on our side. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen right now. Okay, all right, so just a recap, we looked at, you know, this very risk assessment sheet. This is a very simple template, and we try to introduce some reports and dashboard. All right, so I believe that you guys have found this very presentation insightful. All right, so that is pretty much what we did today. Today we actually looked at a template, which is the risk assessment report, right? And then we had to predefine the parameters to make sure that some of the names that are going to be used in the risk assessment reports are consistent, and we use data validation for that. And then we created a lot of reports. We introduced some calculations in the template to make sure that we are estimating the target, which is the maximum risk level. So we are comparing the initial risk against the maximum, the final risk against the maximum, and then the residual risk against the maximum, right? And we're able to estimate scores for each of them. So there's a score for each reference ID, which is each unique risk that we've identified within the row. And then on a higher level, there are also another categories that we were able to do report for, which is level 0 to 3.5. There could be several additional levels, but it's all based on the user because that's a template. And at the end of the day, we're able to generate a very nice looking dashboard like this. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this is basically the fact that we've shared some insight into our template. I believe that you guys have found it insightful. If you want to customize your template, if you want to add value to your template, you want to bring some insight, all right, you can always get in touch with us. All you need to just visit us on www.checksell.com and get in touch with me. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, today is probably my last video that's going to look more organized like this. In subsequent videos, probably for Monday, I'm going to be somewhere on the desert and I'm not going to be looking very cool. So I'll probably be hiding my face and I'm just going to be sharing my screen, right? All right, so you guys should have a very amazing day. Have a very wonderful weekend and see you again next week. Bye for now.